Welcome everyone, this is Sam continuing on with the pleural fluid analysis video. So in this video we're going to talk about the pleural fluid analysis after performing a diagnostic thoracentesis. In medicine we see pleural effusions a lot of the times, and mostly the management depends upon the ability to differentiate an exudate from a transudate because the management options are totally different for both of them. So let's take a dive into the pleural fluid analysis on how to differentiate a transudate from an exudative. Traditionally, Light's criteria was used to differentiate transudate from an exudate. It has got a sensitivity of 97.5% and a specificity of 80%. Now, what do we mean by sensitivity of the test? It is the ability of a test to rule out a disease. It's a very important fact to remember that sensitivity rules out a disease. For example, in this case, the sensitivity of Light's criteria is 97.5%. That means if the test is negative, I can assure with 97.5% accuracy that the pleural fluid is not an exudate. However, there is a 2.5 percent chance of being an exudate, and this is called the false positivity rate. So when we are looking at sensitivity, false positivity is the flip side of the coin we need to take into consideration. That means 2.5% of the transdates are wrongly diagnosed as exudates with Light's criteria. Now let's talk about specificity of a test. It is the ability of a test to rule in a disease. For example, in this case, Light's criteria got a specificity of 80%. That means if the test is positive, then I can assure with an 80% certainty that it is an exudate. However, there is a 20% chance of me being wrong. That means there's a 20% chance I can say that it is not an exudate, and this is called false negativity of the test. So specificity goes in with false negativity. So in a nutshell, sensitivity rules out a disease and it goes in with false positivity, while specificity rules in a disease and it goes with false negativity. So when trying to impl implement Light's criteria, you collect the serum sample and also the pleural fluid sample. The serum sample you draw via phlebotomy, and then you send it for the protein, the albumin, and also the LDH. The lactate dehydrogenase is an inflammatory marker. After getting the pleural fluid and the serum values, you compare and compound and try to apply this criteria. Light's criteria for an exudate is positive if any one of the following comes out to be positive. There are three criteria. The first one is the pleural fluid ratio to serum ratio of the protein. Remember, the numerator is always a pleural fluid because the pleural fluid protein is a lesser value when compared to the serum protein. So, if the pleural fluid protein to serum protein ratio is greater than 0.5, that means there's a lot of protein in the pleural fluid, then the pleural fluid is an exudate. Or if the pleural fluid LDH to serum LDH is greater than 0.6, it is also an exudate. Or if the pleural fluid LDH is greater than 2/3 the upper limit of the normal of serum LDH, then again the pleural fluid is an exudate. Now what's the normal value of the LDH? Well, it depends upon lab to lab, and usually it is around 180 to 240 international units per liter. So 2/3 of it comes around 160. So in my lab, I use this as a cutoff, and if I can see that the pleural fluid LDH is greater than 160 international units per liter, then I could say that yes, this is an exudate. There is a extension of the Light's criteria which is called the modified Light's criteria. When do we apply this modified Light's criteria? Well, this comes into play when only one of the criteria is positive for an exudate and the other one is positive for an transudate. Now that pushes us in a dilemma, and in situations like this, in order to corroborate the protein levels of the pleural fluid, we go one step ahead and perform something called the gradient between the serum and the pleural fluid albumin. So you get the number of the serum albumin from the LFT, and then you also get the numbers from the pleural fluid albumin. From the serum albumin, if you deduct the pleural fluid albumin, and if the value comes out to be less than 1.2 grams per deciliter or 12 grams per liter, then it is an exudate. It's a very simple mathematical formula. If the pleural fluid albumin level increases, then the difference between the serum albumin and the pleural fluid albumin comes down, and that is why if this value is less than 1.2 grams per deciliter, you can say it's an exudate. This mainly increases the specificity of the Light's criteria from 80% to 94%, so that we can say with certainty that the so-called pleural fluid which is on the dilemma is actually an exudate. Now, Light's criteria was proposed by Richard Light in the 1970s, and it's got some issues. Like, for example, some exudates are presenting as transudates. For example, the most common thing I see is a patient presenting with pancreatitis. Now, in these patients presenting with pancreatitis, because of the pancreatitis, there will be a pleural effusion, and usually the pancreatitis is an inflammatory condition and it should have been an exudate, but sometimes it can manifest as transudate, and it becomes difficult because patients with acute pancreatitis also might be having some heart failure symptoms or some negative effects on the heart, and that is the reason why this Light criteria fails in identifying some effusions which are actually exudates, but then they present as transudates, and that's why its specificity is low. In order to get a higher specificity and sensitivity, a guy named Hefner in 2001 proposed what is called the Hefner's criteria. Now, this is a simpler criteria to apply, and I personally use it on all my patients in the hospital because you don't need to get the labs from the blood. You just need to do an ultrasound guided thoracentesis and depend on the values you get from pleural fluid analysis. Now, how can you say a pleural fluid is an exudate based on this criteria? It has three parameters, and if any one of the following is positive, you identify the pleural fluid as an exudate. The most common thing I'd like to see is a pleural fluid protein. If the protein is greater than 2.9 grams per deciliter, then the pleural fluid is a exudate. It's as that simple. Or if the pleural fluid cholesterol is greater than 45 grams per deciliter, it's an exudate. Or if the pleural fluid LDH is greater than 0.45 times the upper limit of the normal serum LDH, then again the pleural fluid is an exudate. Now, if you can compare these two criteria, the pleural fluid LDH value has been reduced from 66% to 45% by Hefner, and this is a major modification, and that is why we tend to pick up more exudates and not wrongly label them as transdates. Now, Hefner's criteria has a sensitivity of 100%, and this is the reason why I love this criteria, while a specificity of 99%. It so happens in the hospitals that when at the time of doing a diagnostic thoracentesis, we don't need to necessarily draw the labs at the same time. So it's a less work on the lab, and also less discomfort to the patient to get the blood for a second time in order to corroborate our pleural fluid analysis. So with this, I finished the presentation, and I hope you guys enjoyed this clinical pearl, and I hope you will apply this criteria in your patient population. Guys, if you do like my videos, please do subscribe and send suggestions for specific topics you want to clarify with regards to medicine. So long for now. Happy studying. Bye bye.